Live to Minneapolis now, where there has been a bridge collapse of 35W Bridge. Joe Fryer is live at the scene with more. Joe, what is going on?
Well, Julie, we are at a way where we can't get a great, perfect look at what's happening, but a witness described it to me best. We see a lot of black smoke billowing from the bridge. It is an entire bridge collapse here, the 35W Bridge over the Mississippi River. One witness described it to me at the center of the bridge over the river gave in and went down all the way down into the water, and thus both sides, the north side, the south side, or maybe more west and east here, then caved down. So the image is basically that the bridge is going normal and then all of a sudden quickly angles down into the water, where the center part then went underneath the water. Witnesses tell us that there were a number of cars on the bridge, some sitting at an angle on the bridge, but others did go into the water. At this point, we don't know how many cars went into the water. We don't know how many people may still be in the water. There are emergency crews everywhere on the scene, fire trucks, police, unlike anything I have ever seen before, trying to keep people away from the scene to make sure nothing more happens to anyone. But of course, most of all, we have to assume trying to rescue and help the people in the water. Around me here, just a little ways away, we see people on the ground being attended to after some form of injury or something. We don't know if they were involved, if their cars were involved in the accident, or what exactly happened. One person tells me there was a school bus that was a part of this, but as far as he could tell, everyone got off the bus okay because they weren't in the center of the bridge where all of this seemed to happen. So again, we are just getting on the scene. What we can tell you is mass chaos, police, fire, ambulances everywhere, black smoke and fire billowing from the bridge at a part where it broke. And from what we understand, the center of the bridge completely collapsing and falling into the water, with several cars on the bridge at that time.
Joe, I know it's early, and as our viewers are taking a look at the scene right now with that black smoke billowing, have you heard anything as to what may have caused that bridge to collapse? Was there an explosion or an accident on the bridge of any kind?
Not that we've heard about yet, but I've only spoken with one or two people who saw it happen. They didn't describe anything like that. They just saw it give in. So at this point, we cannot say what is exactly responsible for it.
And do you have any idea at what time this happened? Was it minutes ago? Was it?
It sounds like it happened shortly after 6 o'clock. From what I've been hearing reports, maybe about 5 after 6 is when the first report of this started to come across. So we're hearing about a few minutes after 6 o'clock is when this happened. Obviously, that's during a key part of rush hour, so a number of cars on the road at that time.
And you're standing where, Joe?
I'm standing kind of just to the north and west of where this bridge collapse would have happened. So I'm at the corner of River Parkway and a little bit away from Chicago, I guess I'd say. So it's near CenterPoint Energy Facility, 1240 West River Parkway. Looking up right now, that's the address I'm standing outside of right now.
We're seeing also a semi that looks to be at the top of our screen. I know, Joe, you're unable to see a signal and see the image that we're seeing right now. But as far as the type of traffic that typically moves through there with the university close by, is it heavily industrial traffic as well? Do we have to be concerned at all that there may be some trucks carrying some chemicals as we look at that semi up there?
You know, I can't see from my angle what it is that's on fire. I can't quite tell if it's a vehicle that might be carrying some sort of industrial, or whether it's just the bridge or something else on the bridge. It's hard to tell from the vantage point that I'm at, but it's certainly very possible that something carrying like that is on the bridge. I just can't tell from my vantage point.
I mean, it's a horrifying thing to happen at any time of day, but 6 o'clock, obviously, right in the middle of rush hour as people are heading home. Once again, we want to show you the map where this bridge collapsed. As all of us know, just a heavy, heavy traffic flow most times of the day, especially during rush hour. Right now, Joe, you said you can see them actively, several rescue crews on the scene.
Yeah, there's rescue crews all over just from where we're standing, and we have to presume from every angle of this they are attacking this. We have to assume, you know, again, I'm probably on the northwest side of it. We have to presume, you know, this is affecting all sides of the river. This happened on both sides of the bridge in each direction. So we have to assume that crews are on every corner, northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast, trying to help all the people who are involved in this. Right now I'm looking and I'm seeing a man slowly being carted off. It looks like his shirt may not be on, and a police officer
went into the water, and how many people have been affected by this.
We do expect, of course, that MnDOT will give us an idea of the age of this bridge, and we've been talking on and off for several weeks now about the aging infrastructure in many of the nation's bigger cities, and that certainly could play a role in what's happened here. Also a possibility that perhaps an accident triggered what you're witnessing right now, but our Joe Fryer, he says he's along the northwest side of the Mississippi River, and he's taking a look at the situation from his vantage point, talking to some folks on the scene. Joe, you had given us an update a moment ago on some of the injuries that you're witnessing and that are being reported. What is the latest as far as rescue personnel, helicopters, and evacuation teams?
You know, Mike, it's very clear that everyone who can help is trying to help here. We see a man whose ribs are wrapped. He is slowly walking, thankfully on his own, and being assisted by another person. I can't tell if it's an officer or medical personnel or just a good Samaritan. But what we also saw was this woman. She was being carried by a police officer. She was wearing a neck brace. She appeared to be awake, but she was basically being carried up by a police officer and loaded into an ambulance from whatever injuries it was she suffered in what happened here. So just where we're standing in the last minute, we've seen a couple people injured but awake, being brought up and being attended to here in the position where we are. And again, we are about the 1200 block of West River Parkway, just on the northwest side of where this bridge collapsed.
Well, this is just an unbelievable scene for all of us who have traveled this bridge, which I'm sure is everyone watching. We have a different view of the scene right there. You can see that bridge just collapse right into the water. That is just horrifying. And right now, obviously, crews are trying to figure out who may be in the water. And that is a massive rescue effort underway. You can see some emergency vehicles on the scene there.
Joe, I know as you take a look at this scene, were you able to see any construction barricades or pylons or anything to indicate that perhaps any work had been done here recently?
We are not close enough at this point to be able to see that. You have to understand, in our vantage point, there's a lot of trees and high grass that are blocking our view of the river where this actually went in. So at this point, I'm not familiar enough with whether there was construction at this bridge at this time.
We hear a lot of yelling there behind you and some sirens. Is that an indication to us that it is a chaotic scene, that those are witnesses or people involved in the wreck that we hear yelling, or are those emergency personnel yelling direction and order between them?
There are so many people here right now, people who witnessed it, people who are just witnessing it now, who are here. You can see the cell phones out. This is part of what happens nowadays when these things happen. Everyone, in a sense, becomes a journalist or recorder of some point. They are, using their phones. I think many of them are checking with their friends, text messaging, making sure that no one they know was involved in this, but also recording it themselves. All along, another bridge actually, a parking ramp actually, just up above. We can see a number of people overlooking it from there. And meanwhile, police are trying to control the crowd, because you have to understand, emergency crews are trying to get through here, trying to get people out. The more police they can have here, the better, to try and help and control the situation to make sure no one else gets injured. At first, when we arrived on the scene, we were pretty close, and police pushed us back. And right now, I can tell you, another police officer is putting up tape to keep us even farther back. They don't want us to be too close to this because of the fact that the smoke is going to be billowing possibly in this direction, and just to make sure that nothing else happens from here on out. It's hard. Their job is to try and not only save the people who have been injured by this accident, but also to make sure no one else is injured unnecessarily.
Joe, is there anyone standing by that you could find that we could talk to who might have seen this happen? I have no idea what your scene is like there, if there are people kind of milling about, or if those who are around are pretty active and frantic trying to get help.
There are plenty of people, and I will, if you give me a few seconds here, I'll look around and see if I can try and find some folks to talk with right now.
Okay, well, by a couple of moments as you continue to take a look at how the map of the scene that has become an issue here in the last hour or so, the collapse of that bridge there, 35W in Minneapolis, is quite a situation now, as you'd imagine, the height of rush hour, students as well in the area near the University of Minnesota campus, and traffic has been closed, obviously, in both directions. A number of injuries, as Joe has reported. And
it looked like the bridge collapsed into the water and also on top of a highway underneath. So, it is pretty staggering to think when a bridge collapses that is that busy at 6 o'clock at night, what rescue crews will be dealing with here in the Mississippi River and also along the roadway underneath where that bridge collapsed. It looks like a very large section of that bridge went down.
And what may be an issue here for folks as well who are down in this scene is, if you can take a look there about the middle of your screen, there appears to be a barge We don't know, from the angle we're seeing here, that the bridge may have in fact fallen on that barge. We don't know that to be the case at all, but there may be personnel on that as well. So that's another thing that rescuers are going to have to deal with. You've got the drivers and anybody who might have been walking along the area, anybody who might have been near the water line there on the ground below, and of course now this barge appears to be entering into the equation to some extent.
And you can see that black smoke billowing from the scene, as Joe Fryer referenced. It appears that is some sort of semi and some cars that are on fire, and obviously that creates problems of its own with air quality and problems for those who are in the area. We're not sure, of course. It's a tractor trailer apparently that is burning, which creates other problems as well, but you can clearly see that smoke still billowing from the scene.
One thing that the smoke can tell us is, by its dark nature, that fire is still highly active. Typically when the emergency crews begin watering fires like this, as the smoke there toward the top of your screen begins to turn whiter or lighter in color and gray, that usually is an indication that the fire is slowly becoming a little more under control, but it's heavily dark there toward the middle to the bottom of your screen as well.
Now let's head back to Joe Fryer now. Joe, what's going on your end?
Hi, Julie. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
We're with Gary Babineau, who was on the bridge. Gary, what can you tell us was happening when you were on there?
It was bumper-to-bumper traffic, probably 10, 15 miles an hour, and the road construction was slowing everything up, and it just completely gave way. The whole bridge from one side of the Mississippi to the other just completely gave away, fell all the way down. I probably had a 35-foot free fall, and there's cars in the water, there's cars on fire. The whole bridge is down, and there was a school bus right next to me. We actually had to carry all the kids off of the bridge, find a safe place to get them off, and it's just incredible. I cannot believe that I'm even talking right now.
Before it happened, right before it happened, are they asking you questions?
Oh. What's that?
Joe, can you hear us?
I can't hear what you're saying.
Okay, Joe Fryer.
Gary, can you guys still hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Joe. He just broke up the last thing he was saying. We had a hard time hearing.
Sounds good. We'll move a little away. Gary, right before it happened, what exactly did you feel?
Wow, well, we're having a hard time.
You know, a huge jackhammer, and the whole bridge was shaking, and then it completely gave out. It didn't go, it completely fell, and it hit hard.
Any idea how many people were in the water, how many cars?
It was bumper to bumper, so I don't know, I'd say maybe 75 to 100 cars on the bridge that fell, and or maybe more. It's a long bridge, but it was bumper to bumper. There was definitely a lot of cars on that bridge.
How did you get out yourself? Did you get rescued, or did someone help you?
Nope, I got out right away. My door would open, and the bridge was at such an incline, we had to kind of scale up the bridge. And there were a couple cars that were kind of sliding down, you know, screeching because it was such an incline. We had to climb up the bridge and find somewhere safe to jump off because the bridge was no longer connected at all. So,
looking around you, did it look like people were getting out on their own, or were there people that still needed help? What did you see around you?
There was a lot of dust. I couldn't see much for the first probably minute and a half, and then I realized that the school bus was right next to me, and me and a couple other guys went over and started lifting the kids off the bridge. They were yelling, screaming, bleeding. I think there was some broken bones.
Good. How are you doing right now, Gary?
I'm doing good. I have a small cut from hitting the steering wheel. Thank God I was wearing my seatbelt because I don't know what would have happened because I hit hard. I can feel where my seatbelt was, you know, kind of like a bruise, but my back really hurts from the actual time that we actually hit.
Good. All right, Gary Babineau, thank you so much. Gary was in there on the bridge when this happened, and Mike and Julie will send it back to you guys.
Just unbelievable. Thank you so much, Joe. We'll check back in a bit.
Gary, understandably shaken there. He's talking about what had happened for him as he was on that bridge and was able to get out of his car and you know, obviously get out of harm's way, but had a chance to see just everything that's been going on there. And joining us now on the phone with the Minneapolis Police Department is Amelia Huffman, and appreciate you taking a few moments to get us up to speed. If you would, let us know right now where things stand and what exactly happened today.
Well, I don't have too much information for you at this point. Our information at dispatch was received just a short time ago that the bridge had collapsed and that there were cars in the water. We have personnel at the scene now for the rescue operation, and we'll keep you updated throughout the night.
Any idea if there was construction going on? We just heard from an eyewitness who said there was some kind of jackhammer that was being used, and all of a sudden the bridge just completely collapsed. Do you have any idea yet?
It's not clear at this point what caused the collapse.
Okay, Lieutenant, you talked about having resources there on the scene. Is the department prepared to handle something like this? And when you say resources, how many officers are specifically assigned to something like this?
Well, I'll tell you, we'll use all the resources that we have available in the city, which is quite substantial, and we'll work in cooperation with our partners at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, Minneapolis Fire Department, and other neighboring agencies if need be.
When you're working an emergency situation like this, is this something you practice for in as much as communication between the various agencies?
We do work with the neighboring agencies on a variety of emergency preparedness plans and drills, both sort of theoretical tabletop exercises and in the field. And communications is one of those issues that certainly we anticipate having the need for interoperability, which is the ability to talk to people in other agencies.
Have you ever seen anything even remotely like this before?
No, I have never seen anything remotely like this before.
What are your officers in the field reporting to you right now as far as conditions for them to be able to go in there and help people?
Well, we'll have to keep you updated on that as time goes on, because at this point all of our efforts are focused on the operation, and not much in terms of communicating back regarding what people are seeing or how people are feeling quite yet.
Lieutenant, are you anywhere close to the scene currently?
I am not currently at the scene, but we certainly do have people there now, and those folks will be in contact with you throughout the night.
Okay.
All right, we appreciate your time and good luck tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.
If we could check back in with Joe Fryer, he is on the scene right now and just spoke with a gentleman who was in what he said bumper-to-bumper traffic just after 6 o'clock tonight. He said traffic was moving at about 10 to 15 miles an hour, and a jackhammer appeared to be shaking the bridge, or at least that was his perception, when all of a sudden the entire bridge completely gave way. And he said he did believe there had to be about 100 cars because it was bumper-to-bumper traffic. Joe, have you talked with anyone else?
No. In fact, police are pushing us farther and farther and farther back because they don't want anyone else to get injured. A lot of people close to the scene. Everyone's on their phones. In fact, it's hard to even get a cell phone signal out of here. But they're pushing people back to try and keep everyone safe at this time, so we can see even less from the vantage point that we're at right now. But as I mentioned earlier, what we saw at the time was a couple people within about maybe 15, 20 minutes after this happened being brought up, carried up a hill. One guy appeared to have a cut and some bruises around his ribs. Another woman was being carried by a police officer and was still wearing a neck brace at the time. And police just continue to whip out the police tape and try and set up as much as possible around this giant area to try and keep people as far back as possible. And that's probably the best thing they can do right now, so they can concentrate on the rescue effort, assuming that's what's still going on at this point, or helping anyone else in the area.
Okay, Joe, at the risk of being redundant, it is now 6:45 in the evening, and many folks just getting home from their whereabouts for the day, and so it's worth certainly a recap of what's going on. I just would like, if you would, take a moment again and walk us through the chronology of the events that have unfolded here in the last hour or so, Joe.
From what we understand, and the initial report I heard came just a little bit after 6, maybe about 5 minutes after 6 o'clock, so in the heart of rush hour. Traffic, we're told, was bumper to bumper on the 35W bridge in both directions. One man says they were maybe going around 10 miles an hour at the time, so that gives you an idea that the bridge was packed at the time. All of a sudden, one guy says he sounded like a jackhammer, tremors underneath him, and then all of a sudden it gave in. He feels he dropped however high the bridge is, maybe about 35, 40 feet down below and into the water. Certainly quite a jolt, but he was able to take care of himself. He was wearing a seatbelt, which he says was fortunate. He was able to get out of the vehicle himself and help a school bus, which was right next to him, a school bus filled with children. He was able to help them. He says he saw a variety of injuries on that school bus. It happened with traffic in both directions. This is a complete bridge collapse. What exactly happened is unclear, but we do know there was construction going on. People say they saw construction crews and barricades, so we do know, not to imply that this is responsible for it, but we do know that there was some construction going on in this area when this accident happened. What exactly caused it, of course, is unclear, and I'm sure it will be days, if not weeks, before we get a good answer as to what exactly happened. The main effort right now is to try and get everyone out of the water, rescue as many people as possible, and hopefully that's something that's already happened. It's hard to estimate how many cars were involved in this, perhaps dozens, perhaps even up to 100.
Yeah, well, when it's bumper-to-bumper traffic right at 6 o'clock, the scariest thing, I guess, he must have felt, Gary, the gentleman you spoke to, like one of the lucky ones. He at least was still on a part of the bridge that you could get out of your car and walk up to safety. A lot of those people who ended up in the water, I'm sure, is who we're most concerned about tonight, and I'm sure the rescue crews trying to get to them, but logistically, this is also going to be a nightmare just getting to that scene to try to help.
And what I'm not aware of at that point is how deep the river is at that point. And clearly that plays a key role for those who actually went into the center there. And the way it was described to me was that basically the center gave in, that went down, and therefore on both sides of the bridge it kind of angled downward, as you've probably seen. So some people might have still been at enough of an angle where they could get out themselves, but others were farther down and maybe into the water or close to the water.
Certainly the focus, Joe, is on anybody who is involved, whether on foot or in a car, in the rescue efforts there. But as we continue to show our live picture of the scene, we're noticing too that the smoke is beginning to turn a little more gray, a little more white over the last few minutes here, which perhaps is an indication that they've got this fire under control. Have you heard from any officials, Joe, as you continue to work that scene, about the concerns perhaps about air quality for others in that area?
That was the first reason they backed us off in the first place, and that's when we were getting pretty close to the river when we first arrived on the scene. The main reason that the police officer was trying to back us up was because he was afraid that the smoke, which was very black at that point, was going to start wafting in our direction. So that's the main reason he was trying to back us off. Now it appears, you're right, the smoke is a far more gray-white, less toxic-looking smoke, but I think they're just trying to get people back to try and clear the scene. There were so many people so close to what happened. It had to have been very difficult. Rescue people, for firefighters, for paramedics, for police to try and control the situation and really get a good look at who needed help. I mean, mixed in within all the people, you saw laying on the ground one woman who was clearly injured, didn't appear seriously, but clearly needed some sort of attention, and she was just in the middle of all the witnesses who were standing around. So, you know, clearing out the space certainly is helpful in that regard.
Okay, Joe, we know you're going to continue to work the scene for us, and we're going to let you go for just a couple of moments. Thank you for the update.
Certainly heartbreaking for anyone waiting for a loved one to get home that takes this route. It is a scary, unbelievable scene right now. 35W bridge over the Mississippi has collapsed. We have Tricia Volpe on the phone now, who is outside of HCMC. What's it like there, Tricia?
Well, I'm not sure if you can hear in the background. There have been several ambulances, sirens on, of course, lights on, all around this building here just in the last 5 or 10 minutes that I've been here. I'm at Park and 8th right now in downtown Minneapolis, just outside of HCMC, and I just spoke to an HCMC official just a couple of minutes ago, and she said, indeed, depending on the number of patients, certainly several will be brought here because this is a trauma center, but depending on the number, if there's a large number of patients, there will also be sent to other hospitals in the area. They'll be triaged. HCMC at this point is considering this a disaster situation. They don't know at this point, though, how many patients will be brought here. Again, several will be taken to other hospitals, but even as I'm standing here, you can see several ambulances have gone by, and they'll be dropping people off here. They'll be leaving, and certainly they've sent as many resources as possible out to the scene to be able to help in any way they can. The more ambulances out there, the more medical personnel out there, the better. They can get them back here to the trauma center where folks can be treated quickly.
Do those ambulances appear to be coming in a controlled manner, or does the situation at HCMC appear at all chaotic?
No, at this point, everything is very controlled out here. I mean, you know, the ambulance goes by, they've got the lights on, they've got the siren blaring, and of course people will be pulling over, and there isn't really any chaos here at all. They're just kind of coming in, coming out, not clear whether there are patients in there, not clear if these are just ambulances being dispatched out to the scene at this point, but certainly everything seems to be in good order. I'm also told by the official here at HCMC that we are going to be getting regular updates. Once they have a handle on the situation, once they figure out exactly what has happened here, what role HCMC is going to be playing, they're going to be giving us regular updates throughout the evening.
Have they given you, Tricia, a time yet as to when we can expect that first update?
Probably, I would say, if I were to guess at this point, it'll be within the hour. The person who I spoke to, the person who's in charge of setting all of that up, she was actually at home, and she is en route here right now. So she herself, the person who kind of gathers information and gives it to us as members of the media, she herself is trying to get a handle on the situation, and she said that she should be out here within just a few minutes.
All right, Tricia, we will check back. Thank you so much. And we want to update those of you who are just arriving home from work. What you're looking at right now is a live scene. 35W in both directions collapsed shortly after 6 o'clock today. A large section of that bridge simply fell to the ground. Eyewitnesses are saying at the time there was bumper-to-bumper traffic. And apparently, witnesses believe that there was road construction going on. We have no idea if that played a role in this bridge collapse or not. We spoke with one gentleman earlier on the phone who said he just fell 35 feet in a free fall. And near him, right behind him, was a school bus. That particular bus, they were able to carry all of the children off of the bus, some of whom had injuries, but obviously thankful that they were on the particular section they were on and not farther in, because a large section of that bridge simply went into the water. Also a fair amount of semi-traffic, construction vehicle traffic, which we are told may account in part anyway for the smoke you see there at the center top of your screen. There was a fire there much earlier that was really blazing for a bit there. The smoke heavy and black for a time. It appears now to be somewhat under control. And we also spoke with Lieutenant Amelia Huffman with the Minneapolis Police Department not too long ago, who had told us that they have many crews on the scene. Obviously, they're going to allocate whoever they can. It's tough to get officers who are working all over the city to a scene like this, because while they're trying to get in, a lot of the emergency personnel are trying to get out and get some of those folks out to hospitals. And obviously, right now, we have no idea how many people have been affected by this accident. We know a lot of you are at home right now waiting for your loved ones to arrive home. This is obviously a heavily traveled route, and this was right after rush hour. We have a scene at crew at HCMC that we will be checking in with frequently. I'm sure many of the hospitals, Regions is another trauma center that will be responding to this accident. But right now, logistically, it's just getting there and trying to find out how many people need help, getting to those people and getting them out of the area. Joe Fryer has been on the scene. He said it was fairly chaotic. The police are moving him back because of those fumes that were coming off the bridge. But what he saw were several people walking up away from the banks of the river and trying to get away from the scene if possible, many of whom had injuries, and it was a pretty chaotic scene from River Parkway where he was situated. Interesting to note, too, as we continue on this live picture, you don't see any air rescue personnel going down in this area. It could be any number of reasons for that. It may be just that the shot that we're holding is a little too tight, and perhaps they're working outside the perimeter of that shot. But if you look deep into the picture, you can see all of the lights, and occasionally you hear the sirens as we go to Joe Fryer for further updates throughout the evening. And Tricia Volpe over at HCMC. Understand, too, that there is a highly coordinated effort with all of the emergency agencies through something like that. So the police are working closely with the fire departments and all of the rescue personnel, and they're doing their best, you can be assured, to get those folks out of there. Yes, and we were talking, obviously summer is a heavy construction time. We do not know what caused this bridge to collapse, but the gentleman we spoke to earlier said that there was construction actively going on, and was saying maybe that's why traffic was already bumper to bumper before this bridge collapsed. And he said some kind of jackhammer was being used when all of a sudden the bridge just completely gave way in both directions, and he, like I said traffic was bumper to bumper at the time. So crews are there right now trying to figure out, we're sure, how many people have been injured, how many people may still be in the water after this collapse. Folks familiar with this route know that the footings of that bridge are rather substantial in size, and it may be, as Julie had mentioned there, perhaps an issue of construction. That's not for us to say for sure at this point. We do expect to hear from MnDOT here shortly on something like this, but it may also be, in fact, that there may have been some type of accident or explosion that led to a weakening of the structure and the integrity of that bridge, which we're going to talk about at length when we get that opportunity with somebody from the Department of Transportation. Also, we had talked a bit about barge
perhaps being in this area. It's still evidently there, given the live picture that we're able to assess right now. We don't know how that factors in here at all. We don't know if anybody was on that barge. We don't know if the bridge is in fact on top of it. We do have Sky 11 heading out to that scene, and all of our crews now scrambling for coverage of this story, which seemed to develop right around rush hour today. And
we just got word that the State Patrol is setting up an area for a command post right at that site. All they're saying at this point, obviously, there we have some live pictures from Sky 11 on its way to this bridge collapse. So we'll be watching that as we understand the State Patrol is setting up a command post to answer questions. Traffic is being stopped at University Avenue from the north and Washington Avenue from the south. And we should be getting an update here from the State Patrol shortly. We know a lot of you are watching this with anxious hearts because you're waiting for your loved ones to get home. We will bring you information from the State Patrol as soon as we get it, including who you should be calling, who you can be contacting to try to figure out, how to find your loved ones if in fact you are looking for them after this accident. We know that cars were bumper to bumper and probably 100 or so cars affected and possibly going into the water. As you can see, we come around here to the scene on just a beautiful, sunny summer night.
Oftentimes when emergency crews from various sources are attending an emergency scene like this, they may have some information but clearly do not want to be careless about disseminating it, so they will talk to each other to find out who knows what before any central figure takes a podium to issue any type of statement to the media. I know that a lot of you are likely waiting with bated breath to find out further details, as are we quite obviously, but if you're wondering as to why no official voice has spoken from this type of scene, this is fairly often the case in a crisis like this.
And we should mention too, Joe Fryer was saying so many people were trying to use their cell phones at that scene that it was difficult to get a signal out. So know that as well, that it's hard for people to use their cell phones right now simply because there is so much cell phone traffic in that area. And there you see it. There is the bridge collapsed completely into the river. If we could get a tighter shot of that, I know they're working on it, to just zoom in and see what we can.
We're going to ask our producer or director if they could to see if there's anybody in our chopper who is going to be able to tell us a little more about what it is they're seeing, and we're going to work on that technically for you in a moment. But right now we're able to speak with Ken Barnhart with MnDOT, who's joining us now by phone. And quite obviously, Mr. Barnhart, this is a tragedy that we're just now learning some details of. But if you would, tell us, in your estimation, what may have happened here to cause this. Mr. Barnhart, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mike and Julie here with KARE-11. Just, if you would, give us an idea of what may have caused what we're witnessing here now live.
I cannot speculate as to what may have happened. What I can tell you is that both the north and southbound bridges have been damaged, and what we would like people to do at this point is stay completely away from the area. If we do need help later on, we would call for it. The detour right now is using Interstate 94 and Highway 280. The more people that stay away from the area, the better off we're going to be, and the better off rescue workers will be.
Sir, are you aware of any construction going on this bridge?
We were doing a mill and overlay project on the bridge. Again, I'm not going to speculate as to anything that may have happened to the bridge. They will have to be inspected to determine what happened.
Sir, how long have you been with MnDOT?
Almost 18 years.
Have you ever seen anything remotely like this?
Thankfully, no. I'm standing right at the edge of it right now, and I don't even know what to say.
What are you seeing from where you're standing?
I'm seeing that the northbound lanes of the bridge are heaved up, and the southbound lanes have somewhat collapsed also. You
mentioned that there was perhaps some work going on there. How many men, women involved from your department in a project like this?
Oh, boy. From start to finish, I couldn't tell you that. Our work like this is done by contractors, but there again, I cannot speculate on anything that may have happened.
You sound, sir, understandably shaken up. Can you describe your first reaction when you came upon the scene?
I don't think you want to hear my first reaction. What came to mind to me was when the earthquakes hit in San Francisco.
What do you know about the age and integrity of this bridge prior to what happened just now?
As far as we know, we do inspections on our bridges throughout the state on a regular basis, and there was nothing at this point. But there again, I cannot speculate on that. We will have somebody available later from our bridge office that can talk about it.
Can you say with any certainty when the last time this bridge in particular was inspected?
No, I don't have those records with me.
Are you finding it's a problem because people are so curious as to what's happening on the scene? Have you seen some problems with that interfering with rescue efforts?
We are quite a few people down here that should not be down here, and we would like to get everybody out of the area. And it just would make things much easier for us. We don't have to worry about spectators and gawkers.
Have you seen many people being taken away from the scene? Are there still people who are being rescued as we're speaking, or has that seemed to have slowed down?
I can't hear you over the sirens right now.
I was just wondering if people, what we can see from our chopper is that it seems as if there are a lot of people walking around, but we don't see a lot of people being removed from the scene from our vantage point. Are you still seeing a lot of that?
There has been a massive rescue effort undertaken, and they right now are down underneath the bridge. All of the vehicles that you can see from the surface of the bridge, the people have been removed from them.
Ken, I know that you had mentioned several of your MnDOT employees and contractors perhaps working on this bridge prior to its collapse. Are you able to tell the folks at home, the relatives, the loved ones, who they're to contact to get an update on the conditions of those relatives?
At this point, no, I can't. That information will be released as soon as we're able to do that, and you would have to contact State Patrol.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate your time. We understand it's emotional for everybody involved, and we appreciate the information you've shared with us. We know the State Patrol is setting up a command post nearby. And
I just want to stress we want people to do the detours and stay out of the area to let us get our work done.
And those detours, again, 94 and 280.
Yeah, and if possible, take 694. 694 is flowing halfway decent right now. That would be an even better bet for us. I've got one of our traffic people here, and he said 694 is moving fairly good.
And I just have another question for you, too, sir. We were told by an eyewitness that traffic was bumper to bumper at the time of the collapse. Around 6 o'clock, do you have any idea how much traffic normally flows over that bridge?
I don't have, it's more than 100,000 vehicles on a daily basis.
Ken, I know you had mentioned a moment ago about the type of work you thought was being done here, but I'm sorry, I just wasn't able to hear you. Tell me again what was being done.
Basically, it was a simple, we were just doing concrete repairs, nothing full depth, and we were getting out and just taking the surface off, putting a new surface down, new driving surface.
So you weren't doing any work underneath the bridge?
Absolutely not.
Moorings, the pilings, the footings, nothing like that, to your knowledge, was being touched today by MnDOT or the contractors?
There was no work going on beneath the bridge whatsoever.
Did it seem to collapse upon a highway underneath it as well, or mostly just into the river?
We want people to stay out of the area. I haven't had a chance. I don't know for sure how much of it has gone down beneath, but we need people to stay off any of the surrounding roadways.
Do you know yet if your workers are accounted for who are on that bridge?
I can't answer that either.
You're able to see, I'm going to just ask you to do a little sights unseen reporting, if you would. We had heard perhaps that a barge was close to this scene. We don't see it now from our live pictures from Sky 11. Are you able to speak to that at all?
From my vantage point, I cannot see a barge or anything.
Okay. Kent Barnard with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. They're very close to the riverbank, really, and he is talking at length with us. We really appreciate his time giving us an update as to what he's able to see, and what he was telling us is that some work there he was aware of from Minnesota Department of Transportation and its contractors going on the top, working some surface paving repair work.
Yeah, certainly something that happens all the time on nearly every bridge across the state when it's finally summertime and they can get that work done. Obviously, we still don't know what caused this bridge to collapse. He did mention that they're inspected regularly. We don't know when this particular bridge was last inspected, but we do know that there are regular inspections and that obviously they did not believe anything was wrong with this bridge before 6 o'clock tonight when it collapsed with bumper-to-bumper traffic on it.
Structural integrity is certainly going to be one of the main questions asked over the next several days, and the ways to get around this, at least according to Mr. Bernard, were 694 and 94 and 280. He says they're moving about as well as can be expected in a situation like this, but in any case, it's going to be a while before most of these cars are able to be rerouted.
And we know that you're watching this at home with as much disbelief and horror as we are, it is hard to look at these pictures, and I'm sure all of us have been on that bridge and are worried about those who are on it shortly after 6 o'clock, right in the middle of rush hour tonight. We understand that there are several medical choppers on their way to the scene, and obviously you can see from Sky 11 the emergency workers are doing what they can. We were told that they are now currently focused on under the bridge, trying to figure out if people are still in the water after this collapse directly into the Mississippi.
Sky 11 over it right now, and you can see too, if we could just take a look at what you see at the bottom right of your screen, it appears a portion of that bridge, right about there, gentlemen, appears to be on top of some rail cars. I'm assuming freight, but I do not know for sure. Imagine that it's cargo of some type. We don't know if anybody was involved in working that train line, as you see right there. And then it's, of course, the top end of that bridge where the smoke continues to billow from, and fire crews are watering down one apparent semi that had gone up in flames, and also some fire activity there to the left-hand side of your screen as well. That smoke clearly darker, but Joe Fryer had mentioned before from that scene, and I know he's with us again right now, that they had backed his crew away because of concerns perhaps about the toxicity of that smoke. Joe?
Yeah, Mike, we continue to get pushed farther and farther away from the scene. A few things that are worth noting right now. First of all, for people who are concerned about family, keep in mind there are so many cell phones going off right now in this area. It is very hard to get a signal out. So for people who may be struggling to get a hold of loved ones, keep that in mind. Right now, the cell service here, very difficult to get a signal out. It took me several times to try and be able to even reach KARE-11. A few other things here. Photojournalist Fred Akagi just returning from close to the scene. I'm going to hand the phone over to him, and you can get an idea of what he's been observing.
Hi. As soon as I got here, of course, it's the streets are filled with emergency vehicles, fire trucks, and police vehicles. I was able to talk to an eyewitness who's actually on the bridge, whom Joe had talked to earlier. But then as to the parking lot where they were staging up command center, I noticed there were about 4 kids on the sidewalk or in the parking lot with adults attending to them. One was prone, laying on the trunk of a vehicle, didn't have any apparent injuries from the outside, but looked very shaken up. And the kids, I would surmise the younger kids were probably anywhere from 3 to 4 years old. And the young man that was on the back of the trunk, he was probably around 8 or 9. They did load him up in an ambulance. They put him on a backboard with a neck brace, and they scooted him out as quickly as they could. But again, as Joe had reiterated, the emergency scene, the police officers keep pushing us a little bit further back. It's a little bit tougher to see what's going on, but still pretty chaotic right now.
So can you see a lot of activity of ambulances coming and going from where you are?
It hasn't been bad. I know where I was at the parking structure, there probably were about 6 ambulances just waiting to go, and at least 3 or 4 have left now in the half hour that I've been here. One I know that was loaded up with the young man that took off, and the others I presume were also loaded up, but they didn't have their sirens on when they took off. With the young man, they did have their sirens on and were getting down the street as quickly as they could. One other thing that I noticed was a vehicle from Homeland Security. When I got here about 45 minutes ago, that was one of the vehicles I saw pull up. We were speculating, why would they be here? I would say, they just need to be here just in case they think that anything happened with a terroristic event. But I definitely saw a Homeland Security vehicle here.
Brett makes a good point for people who are watching this at home. This is sadly, in our day and age, become a matter now of course. Since September 11th, there are offices of emergency management scattered throughout the country, representatives from Homeland Security who will be on scene at what sometimes may appear to be an even benign situation. Certainly not the case here, but that is their job to do as many quick assessments as possible. We have heard, just to be clear, nothing at all that indicates that this is more than what you're seeing, nothing to indicate at all that this is terrorism by any stretch, but our reporters on the scene told us that they have seen someone from Homeland Security, and that's in fact what they're doing. They work as a kind of a central coordinating hub. picking in all of this information from the various agencies that are on scene and making the best determinations they can as to what caused this.
And obviously they have every rescue crew available on that scene trying to get people in and out. As you heard Mr. Bernard from MnDOT saying, please do stay away. If you're tempted to go to this scene, please understand that it's only going to complicate matters for rescue workers. They're asking anyone who needs to drive around this area to take 94, 694, or 280 as a detour and stay away and let rescue crews do their job. Our KARE 11's Tricia Volpe is live at HCMC, where she has seen obviously many ambulances coming and going, and we're going to check in with her. Tricia, can you hear me?
Yeah, Julie, I can hear you. Indeed, several ambulances coming and going from HCMC. They've been pulling in here one after the other and leaving just as quickly as they come. Witnesses here on the scene say that they have seen at least 3 people being brought in. From what I could see myself, I've certainly seen some ambulances pulling in, folks on stretchers. They're being attended to by medical personnel, immediately being brought into the hospital. And we just spoke with William Larson. He's the assistant nursing manager here at HCMC, and he confirms to us that multiple patients have been brought to Hennepin County Medical Center. This is a trauma center, a level 1 trauma center in the Twin Cities. Multiple patients with multiple injuries, some with critical injuries, but some without critical injuries. He couldn't go into detail about the extent of the injuries other than to say they were critical or not critical, but he couldn't provide us with details about the kinds of injuries. What he did say, though, is that these are injuries that you would expect to see with a situation like this. I'm told that indeed Hennepin County Medical Center is going to be one of the main hospitals for patients to be brought to, but depending on the number of patients, they could also be sent to other hospitals in the area. But the trauma team here, the medical teams are certainly equipped and trained to deal with this kind of situation. It's being called a disaster situation by folks here at HCMC, and we're told, Mike and Julie, that we should expect regular updates throughout the evening, certainly as information becomes available.
Have you seen anyone at this point coming to HCMC to try to locate relatives or people they believe might have been on that bridge?
Have not seen any relatives at this point. We've seen a couple of people standing on the sidewalk watching the ambulances come in and out, and I've certainly spoken to a lot of folks out here, but I haven't run into any relatives or any friends at this point. Doesn't mean that they're not here, and it doesn't mean certainly that they're not en route. We'll expect to see that certainly, I would say, very quickly here within the next half hour to an hour. People will be coming to HCMC as they try to figure out where their loved ones have been sent.
Tricia, any reports of any fatalities at this point?
No reports of fatalities that we know of at this point. William Larson, who we spoke to, couldn't tell us whether there were any fatalities. Again, he mentioned multiple patients, multiple injuries, some with critical injuries, which of course they are attending to immediately and as best as they can, and some with less serious injuries at this point.
And when they say they've declared this a disaster that they're working on, what kind of things click into place at HCMC?
I'm sorry, Julie, you were cutting. I couldn't hear that question.
Do you know what procedures go into place when they are dealing with a disaster? How many extra teams they need to call in at HCMC?
You know, I don't know in terms of numbers. What I can tell you is what I've seen visually, and it seems as though there are at least 7 to 8 medical personnel that I could see that tend to each stretcher as they're being brought into the hospital. What roles those people play, of course, you've got emergency room physicians here, you've got nurses, you've got specialists of all kinds, but in terms of what procedures they do when these patients are brought in, they assess them, and they have to determine what to do next based on what the injuries are.
It's a remarkable thing, I'm sure, to witness, Tricia, as these fine men and women, the professionals in the healthcare industry, are able to work with almost a cool detachment, though you're certain they're very emotional inside, but they're able to go about their business.
Right, absolutely. It's been very interesting. I wouldn't describe them as stoic at all. I would say that these people are certainly all business. They know exactly what they need to do. These are some of the most highly trained professionals in the world, and they know what they have to do. It's very methodical, and the goal is to save lives and, of course, tend to injuries, and you can see that is exactly what they're trying to do.
All right, Tricia, thank you so much. We will, of course, check back with Tricia. We know that the State Patrol has is in the process of setting up a command post, and we'll be checking in with them as well. We know a lot of you are watching right now, and you know that it's likely you knew someone that was on this bridge, or you're at home and you're waiting for a loved one to arrive home that would take that bridge, obviously a very, very congested time of day on that bridge. We are right now trying to come up with a phone number or places you can go to figure out how to contact your loved one or figure out if they're at HCMC. We will have that information for you, because it is a heartbreaking thing to look at and unbelievable, really hard to see this scene. It almost seems surreal.
It really does. This is not something that all the training in the world can prepare you for until it actually happens, and then you hope, I'm certain, that you fall back on all that you've learned and you almost go on autopilot to work in a situation, an environment just like this. And we talked about the Red Cross being on the scene now and trying to assist, and the methodical way many of the emergency personnel will work through a situation like this. As Tricia had mentioned, there's countless injuries, at least at this point. At this point, though, no reported fatalities. And all of the organizations are going to work together to probably offer us some type of update here shortly. And it would not surprise me at all to hear from the mayor at some point on this, because when an event of this magnitude does transpire, often he becomes the point man for the town. So we'll be looking to hear something from City Hall at some point here in fairly short order.
Well, you know, it was interesting to talk with Kent Bernard from MnDOT, a professional who's been with MnDOT for 18 years, and you could clearly hear the emotion and the shock in his voice. He was standing right on the scene, looking at this bridge that has just turned into a crumpled pile of debris. He said that right now what he could see was that they were looking for people underneath the bridge, those cars that might still be in the water. And here's a different vantage point you can see from 6th and Main from one of our cameras live there. You can see the police tape up. They are asking people to please stay away from the scene because it could hamper rescue efforts, and we know no one wants to do that. There are several detours set up, 94, 280, and 694. But obviously this is a massive scene right now.
This is a bridge that was built in 1967, and as MnDOT reported earlier, undergoes, as do all the bridges in the metro, regular inspections. Not able to know for sure when the last time this particular bridge, 35W, was inspected, but it sits about 64, 65 feet above the water level, which, as Joe Fryer is near the scene, can tell you that water level is pretty low, as most rivers and lakes in the area have been for some time. Joe, if you would, get us up to speed on what you're seeing now.
You know, I moved a little bit farther to the west, and basically at where Washington Avenue is over 35W, which is just shy of where this bridge collapsed. And what we see here is just a litany of at least a dozen squad cars, and also a series of tow trucks that are just lined up, sitting here near the scene of where the bridge collapsed on the west and south side. Perhaps waiting to try and get more cars out of the water. It's unclear at this point, but a number of police squads are just sitting here blocking traffic along with a number of tow trucks. Another interesting thing to note, this is happening right near the Metrodome, which is, of course, where a Twins game is getting going right around now. That increased the traffic in the area, increased the intensity. So a lot of people in this area you see walking around in Twins jerseys who are watching this, who are maybe heading to the game when this happened or a little bit after this happened. We're seeing police from not just this jurisdiction here in Minneapolis, but I've seen a Hopkins police officer on the scene here, which means more than likely other jurisdictions from around the area are coming in to help because, as we know, Minneapolis police had to come to this scene but still have to respond to other calls throughout the city. Another thing that we are seeing, I just noticed a few moments ago, a number of people in scrubs, in blue scrubs, perhaps from HCMC or from a local hospital with medical supplies that were walking into the scene. And a little bit before that, photojournalist Brett Akagi witnessed what appear to be doctors, the stethoscopes, heading toward the scene, toward the river, to perhaps offer any help on the scene that they can offer at this time. Mike and Julie.
Well, we're looking live right now at a picture of several rescue boats that are in the water, trying to figure out if there are folks who are still in the Mississippi River as we speak. We understand from an eyewitness that said he was able miraculously to walk away from this accident after being on the bridge. He said he had a 35-foot free fall, he estimated. And when you consider that bridge is about 64 feet above the Mississippi River, you understand the magnitude of a section of bridge this wide and long falling into the river. Both directions, obviously, bumper-to-bumper traffic at 6 o'clock tonight, shortly after 6 when this accident happened. And we understand that Brett Akagi saw some school children who were being treated on the scene. We don't know if they came off of that school bus that has been referenced several times, but we did see a shot of the bus just precipitously close to that edge where the bridge went in, and we understand all the children on that bus were able to be escorted from the scene, and many, I'm sure, on their way to local hospitals as we speak.
Joe, bridge spans about 1,900 to 2,000 feet long. What have personnel been able to do to redirect some of the traffic that was on that bridge but not quite to the point of collapse? Have they been able to clear out those roads?
You know, I'm standing on one side, and obviously they've been, I think, cutting back traffic. I'm going to have to assume, although I'm walking toward it now, I would have to assume they're not letting anyone from 94 get onto 35W. So that would presumably create perhaps some backups on 94, but that would be the smartest approach at this point, is to not even let anyone get onto 35W heading north, and that's from the south side. From the other side, it's tough to say exactly what it is that they're doing, but it's amazing. The traffic agents are out in full force, basically at every intersection, redirecting people, making sure they get nowhere close to the scene, and keeping traffic flowing. I'm standing here at Washington and 35W, and you know, traffic is moving. They've got barricades up everywhere. Police are just using their squad cars to block the scene. Police officers in full force, just standing out in the road and keeping people as far away as possible. Police tape everywhere as they try and keep people just from even coming in this direction in the first place. And at this point, the thing is, the only way you can actually get to the spot is to get onto the interstate. So all the other city roads that they're blocking off are simply to more keep people from walking closer to the scene.
694, 94, 280, the recommended alternates in a situation like this, according to MnDOT, and so many things being digested right now, Joe, by the emergency personnel, and we're still looking live at smoke, though, however, far lighter than it was the last maybe an hour and a half or so ago. Are you able to see if any flames are still active in this area, or whether this seems to be a fire that's under control?
What's amazing is I looked up a few moments ago and saw blacker smoke than I saw not long before that, so I'm not sure what the reason was for that, but what we're still seeing, I'm looking right now at an ambulance that is pulling up into the area. The sound of sirens has not stopped filling the air in the last 1 hour and 20 minutes since this happened. You know, we were actually working on another story at Hennepin County Medical Center when this clearly happened, because all of a sudden we just saw a variety of ambulances take off in full force, and we knew this was not a typical call, and that's when we started heading over to the scene as well. Just now I'm seeing more doctors from the University of Minnesota, or doctors or medical people arriving on the scene, coming here, or whether they've been asked to come or whether they're just coming to see what they can do to help. It's hard to say at this point, but the sound of sirens has not stopped filling the air in this area ever since this happened. We are guessing just a little bit after 6 o'clock.
Also, were there a number of divers in the water right now, though when we look at the scene, it's certainly far more controlled, as you would expect, as time continues to go by. Divers are certainly an important aspect of any kind of rescue or recovery situation. With Minneapolis, we're expecting that they get help from all types of jurisdictions. And is that what you're seeing as well? You had mentioned Hopkins Police also on scene there.
Yeah, and that was the only other squad car I've seen so far, but I will have to assume that other jurisdictions have come in to help in whatever way possible, whether it's helping here at the scene or whether it's perhaps helping take other calls. I'm not sure. But clearly, you know, when an emergency like this happens, suddenly all your resources are directed to one area, and you still have to respond to the other calls that are going on in the city.
Yeah, that's typically the difficulty for a lot of the departments, is trying to maintain order in the rest of their cities and still assist as best they can.
So are you seeing them having a fair amount of ease getting the emergency crews in and out, Joe?
And that's probably part of the reason why they got all the people out of the area, even if their cars, which I assume some of our new cars are still trapped in the cordoned-off area. Part of the reason to do that is to help get these emergency vehicles into the cordoned-off areas, and they have less traffic to deal with, so that helps. Right now here I'm looking and I'm seeing the Minnesota Structural Collapse Rescue Team from the Edina Fire Department is pulling away from the scene, it appears. The Edina Fire Department's Urban Search and Rescue that deals with structural collapse, so that is just leaving the scene. More tow trucks continue to pull up to the area where I'm standing at South 2nd Street and South 13th Avenue.
Witnesses
Go ahead.
Joe, I'm just going to ask you if the witnesses or folks who are nearby watching this, do they seem to be composed and able to get a handle and the scope of what has happened here?
You know, I think it's shock value. People probably can't get close enough at the scene here to actually see what you guys can see from the helicopters up above. But certainly you see lots of people on their phones, lots of concern, and they must have just dumped out a huge group of witnesses here, because suddenly a large group of people are coming out to where I am as if they've been perhaps asked to leave. I'm not quite sure what the situation is. They all appear to be doing okay. There are lots of people all around, mostly just interested in looking, obviously concerned, checking with loved ones to make sure they weren't in the area at the time this happened. You know, it's very much a shocking sight, but at the same time, from most areas around here, you can't actually see it in its fullness.
You're watching KARE 11 News live coverage of what has become a tragic early evening in Minneapolis, the I-35W bridge collapse right across from the University of Minnesota campus there. It happened right around 6 o'clock this evening. We began our extended coverage at 6:30. If you're just joining us, any number of cars on this bridge at the time of the collapse. We checked in with Tricia Volpe not long ago at HCMC, and she has given us the hospital's best update on injuries, serious to critical. No reported fatalities at this point, but when you look at this twisted mass of metal and concrete, it is very tough to imagine that the injuries don't begin to compound over the course of the evening. We also spoke with the Minnesota Department of Transportation earlier, who have advised everybody to stay away from the area using 694, 94, and 280 as your alternate routes.
And to stay away from the scene, as Joe had mentioned. Now, he also mentioned to us, Mike, this Kent Bernard from MnDOT, that the bridge was in fact under repair, but he seemed to indicate there were fairly minor concrete repairs, that he was shocked by what had happened, that there had been no indication that there was any trouble with this bridge, and this was not, in his estimation, major work being done on this bridge. And as he came upon the scene, his voice was very shaky, and he said, you know, 100,000 vehicles daily go over this bridge, which is inspected regularly. He did not have at the moment, the last time this particular bridge was inspected, but clearly was astonished and had never in his 18 years with MnDOT seen anything like this.
A lot of information for him to digest, as you would imagine, too, because in addition to his crews out there, several subcontractors and contractors working on there, and when we asked him if he could account for all of his personnel, it's such a fresh scene right now, it's very difficult. So if you're at home watching and perhaps one of your loved ones, friends, or relatives works for MnDOT or works for one of these contracting companies who might have been doing some of the road work, Kent Bernard was not able to definitively say call a certain number for an update on their condition, but as soon as we get that, of course, we'll pass that along to you.
We have a Lieutenant Amelia Huffman on the phone once again from the Minneapolis Police Department. Thank you for joining us again. Any idea at this point on numbers of people affected or numbers of cars yet, Lieutenant?
Swimming trip. Oh, he's just looking for
Can you hear us, Lieutenant? I hear our chief photographer, Brett Akagi, in the background there.
Yeah, hi there, Julie.
Hi, is this Brett?
Here at the scene a moment ago, we've been talking about that bus that was seen on the scene. It appears that they were a swim team on the way to someplace, and a number of parents are arriving here where we're standing to check and see how their kids are doing, if their kids are okay. Not sure if they're getting any answers at this point, but a number of parents are showing up here.
Amelia, are you still there?
Kids on the bus. Hello?
Hi, Joe. We actually are having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, and we were trying to speak with Lieutenant Amelia Huffman if she is there. We'll check back with you in a moment, Joe, if we could. Lieutenant, are you on the line? All right.
Okay, tell you what, we'll try to get the lieutenant's situation squared away, but Joe, if you're with us, I want to go back to you because we were not clear as to what you were saying. You had mentioned something about a swim team being involved. Do you know where they're from, who this is?
I'm going to have to check real quickly on that. I believe someone said the Weight House, but I'm going to have to check on that. It was a swim team that was apparently heading to a meet of some sort, and so parents now are showing up at the scene to try and learn more about that. Of course, we heard about the school bus. They were next to the man we talked to earlier right after this happened, who was next to the school bus when it happened. That man was able to get out okay and was helping as many of the children as he can who might have been injured in this. So some parents are showing up. They have a look of concern on their face. We'll try and find out a little bit more, but from what I just overheard, it sounded like they were with the Weight House and they were heading to a swim meet probably this evening. when this accident happened.
Are they being allowed to get to their children, assuming those children were not already transported to the hospital?
No, at this point they're at the scene, so I think they're looking for answers at this point. Where we're standing is probably not how they're going to find out about how their children are doing, and a number of them, it appears, may not even actually speak English. Some of the parents here who are on the scene, and so they are probably confused or trying to figure out as much as they can. Where they're standing right now, they're not going to probably find out much about the condition of their children.
They're not being allowed in closer to the scene, Joe? Is that what you're saying?
At this point, I'm not sure if they're allowed to or if that's going to help at this point. My guess is that their kids have probably been taken to the hospital at this point, if that was necessary.
Are you seeing many people still being transported past you in emergency vehicles or by emergency personnel, or is that not happening where you're standing?
Not from where I am standing, and it is the Wait House. It looks like WEIGHT House, which was about 60 kids, one person was guessing, that were on the bus on this swim team at the time. Again, this is just from one parent who was at the scene, and they're trying to find out more about their kids at this time, but you know, they are probably just as starved for information as many of us are at this time.
Any idea on the age of these children?
Hold on, let me check. How old are the kids? 11, so we're talking around 10, 11, 9 years old, in that range is what many of the kids were. But we can't say for sure whether all the kids were that age.
And we know that they're just kind of arriving on the scene while you're talking to us. We're just wondering if any of them have been able to make cell phone contact with any of the kids. Any indication of that?
Not at this point. None that we have talked with have been able to. And keep in mind, if these are 9, 10, 11-year-old kids, chances are those kids don't have cell phones. So our cell phones are not going to be a way that they can reach these kids. And even if those kids had cell phones, chances are they're still on the bus. They don't have them with them still.
And that's obviously what these parents are assuming, is that the kids are on the bus and haven't been transported anywhere yet. Does there appear to be we know that the State Patrol is setting up a command unit in the area. We know that the Red Cross is setting up a spot there to help with the rescue workers and to help take care of some of the children who might have been in a situation where they're on a bus and didn't have a parent nearby. Is there any indication around you of where these command centers are being up, so when people are looking for a loved one, they have a place to go?
Not where I am, but we haven't been directed to those areas yet because they're trying to keep us away at this point as opposed to letting us closer. There are probably some command centers. Whether they've set up command centers for loved ones yet, we don't know at this point, and obviously a lot of these parents don't know because they're standing here. I see one, presumably a father or a man who is on the phone at this time, trying to clearly reach someone. Parents with a concerned look on their faces with their kids, but they just don't know a lot of information at this point, and no one standing where we are is probably going to be able to guide them in the right direction yet.
All right, Joe, we'll let you try to grab a word with some of those parents if you can and find out if they've made contact with any of their kids, and we will check back with you shortly. Thank you, Joe.
All right.
7:35 in the evening right now. KARE-11's been on with this story for the last hour or so. This is the I-35W bridge collapse over the Mississippi in Minneapolis near the campus of the University of Minnesota. And as Joe Fryer has been reporting from the scene now, it's where several cars, maybe as many as 100, early reports are that there were many cars on this span when it collapsed right around 6 o'clock this evening. For all intents and purposes, the height of rush hour. The extent of the injuries not quite clear at this point, though our Tricia Volpe is at HCMC where many of the injured have been taken, and we're hearing anywhere from stable up to critical condition at this early juncture. No reports of any fatalities.
We want to take a look now from our website if we can. Some people have been sending us, here's a picture of the bridge that is part of the MnDOT site, we believe, and just has some information on the bridge. For example, it was 64 feet high before this collapse, and it was built in 1967, regularly inspected, as we have mentioned, by MnDOT. We're not sure when the last date that was inspected, but it was a steel arch deck truss bridge that apparently collapsed instantaneously, and we've heard eyewitnesses and people who were actually in cars on the bridge at the time when it fell that 65 feet say that it was just a complete free fall.
Spans about 2,000 feet, and Many emergency vehicles and personnel on the scene here. We expect that they issue some type of statement from a central hub here in no short order, as well as Homeland Security also involved in this, as you would imagine at home. This is something that needs to be cleared through the Office of Homeland Security from the point that they need to make certain that there is no terrorism involvement here at all, and to this point we have no knowledge of that. What it looks to be is just what you see it to be, a tragic, tragic evening here in Minneapolis where that bridge has collapsed. We also know that weather may be playing a role in what is happening here in the way of recovery, and our weather team is in the office right now giving us an update on some storms, gentlemen, moving through the area.
That's right, Mike. We have thunderstorms, unfortunately, to make the situation worse, just starting to move into the northwest metro right now. If we take a look at Viper right now, you can see that we are watching a line of storms. We are watching them for the last few hours, starting to move into the metro. The heaviest of it right in the northwest metro right now, but they are moving through the Twin Cities as we speak, and they're moving to the southeast right now, moving through Maple Grove, just north of Fridley and south of Andover, and they are again moving to the southeast here. Gradually but surely headed towards the area, and unfortunately it does look as though that area will get at least a little wet at some point. Fortunately, on the most southwestern end of this line of showers and storms is the weakest, but you can see the strongest area moving through the north metro right now, and we will be dealing with some showers and even some thunder showers through the whole metro area, but specifically that area also over about the next half hour to 45 minutes or so as those storms progress through the area. So only to make matters worse, unfortunately.
All right, that's unfortunate. Sven Sundgaard, thank you very much. We'll obviously be keeping an eye on that as well. It's interesting that Brett Akagi, our chief photographer, mentioned that a truck from Homeland Security was there, and obviously that's a matter of due course. It's not to cause any alarm. But the rescue teams are probably better prepared for something like this because of what happened on September 11th, because they had to prepare after that date for some kind of an emergency or tragic accident, as this appears to be, when we would need several teams from various departments all responding to the same scene. That includes police, fire, ambulance. Obviously the hospitals have protocol in place, and maybe better off for it, better prepared because of things that occurred after September 11th.
Well, a couple of reasons you might see that tonight, Julie, and that is, in fact, as you mentioned, 9/11, but also because we happen to be home to a very large airport. So with that in mind, these crews have often trained for a tragedy, a potential tragedy out at one of the airports. Many cases, when you see these types of things happen in smaller towns, the coordination and training is different because the possibility of a calamity is perhaps a little bit less so. So I think in this situation, you've got two reasons why you're seeing what appears to be a very measured and matter-of-fact type operation here, with recovery, with rescue, with emergency personnel, and with talk now of the conversations happening between the agencies. So as we had mentioned before, we certainly expect there to be a central command post, either the one you had mentioned coming up with the State Patrol, or perhaps Homeland Security, federal, state. They're all working in concert just to make sure, as you know, to get that information streamlined and to have one constant voice, so the information is not parsed and it is not varied from agency to agency. And
we obviously will let you know as soon as they are giving an update from any of these command units. Right now we have Jeffrey DeMars on the phone. He's standing at 6th and Main. What are you seeing right now, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, guys, the crews are gearing up, getting everything ready, actually getting the crowd kind of out of the way, because there's quite a crowd here, as you can imagine, if you probably alluded to, because of the Twins game, but they're really staging everything, and you can see a concerted effort, definitely, of cars going in one direction and emergency vehicles going in another direction to save and help whatever needs to be done at the shoreline. Now, I was on the south side of the shore and couldn't see everything, but you could definitely see the bridge, and also you know, a vehicle still stranded on the bridge, and you guys may have that as well. And I talked to somebody who was actually on the bridge, heard the bang, thought it was just the construction workers, but somehow was able to escape. He said it was kind of like a domino effect where cars were falling in front of him. He was able to turn around, get off the bridge, and be safe. But of course, his main concern right now is people fell and how many people are in the water.
Jeffrey DeMars is a backpack journalist with KARE-11 News, been with us now for the better part of the summer, and he's on the phone with us. Jeffrey, if you would, can you tell us what access has been like for you. I don't know if you have your camera with you, if emergency personnel are allowing you access to this story.
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, they have a roped-off area. They're preventing people from, you know, getting anywhere close or obstructing any emergency vehicles from getting in and out. So access is pretty difficult. In fact, you can see, you know, news crews over on foot, and you know, of course, the reporters from the different newspapers and photographers. There's people everywhere trying to get as close as they can. And there is a large roped-off area on the south side of the river, on the north side of the river, of course, across the bridges. So there is, if you want to get in, it's going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But again, it's a large area, so if you know you're sneaky about it, you probably could get in. But they are doing a lot of emergency people out here, preventing people from or even obstructing any rescue services.
Well, Jeffrey, I have another question for you, but it's a good time to mention that they have specifically asked people to stay away from the scene.
Yeah.
If you need to get across the river, take 694, 280, 94. There are several detours set up for people to stay away from that scene. Could you describe to me what the reaction is of people who you do see around you, obviously other than the news crews? Do you see many people trying to locate loved ones? Or
No, you know, the problem is you have so many people that see what's going on, and of course, you don't want to talk about terrorism, but there is that chance if it's out there. I mean, in this post 9/11 world, and you have all of these people on other bridges standing there, talking to their friends, saying, "Yeah, I'm right here." And really, what they should be doing is getting out of the way, let the emergency crews get in, do what needs to be done, so that there's just, you know, not all this not people in the area. So it's you know, as close to chaos, I guess, as you get with concerted emergency effort here.
And that seems to be the talk, is just people trying to take in the scene.
I'm sorry, what's that?
It just seems to be that is the, I can hear the sirens behind you.
Yeah.
That's just people are standing around just basically talking about the scene itself, how it could have happened, their reaction to the scene at this point?
How it happened. You know, so many people were headed to the Twins games. They're saying, you know what, you never see a bridge fall, so no chance in going to the game. And they have their cell phones out, of course, taking pictures. Other people, I was interviewing some of the folks, and just people with their camcorders wanting to, you know, capture, I guess, this historical event in Minneapolis.
All right, Jeffrey DeMars joining us by phone tonight from the scene there, 35W bridge collapse over the Mississippi in Minneapolis. And we're just now seeing cross the Associated Press wire a statement from the Homeland Security Department saying that they have received no indications that this collapse was an act of terrorism. This, according to a spokesman for that department, quote, "We continue to monitor this situation. At this time, no indication of a nexus to terrorism." That, according to the Homeland Security Department, and even according to the lieutenant from the Minneapolis Police Department who had joined us earlier by phone, it certainly does not appear to be the case. It looks just to be a horrible tragedy.
It's
that
just a mystery.
Yeah.
A mystery from MnDOT as well. They said some construction was going on the bridge. Of course, we all know that's normal this time of year and happens
minor
every
even
summer.
by their own
Minor
account.
construction. He said just some concrete repair going on at the time. We did have an eyewitness who said there were jackhammers that he was driving past at 10 to 15 miles an hour in bumper-to-bumper traffic shortly after 6 o'clock when all of a sudden the bridge just gave way in both directions, as you can see, and landed in the Mississippi River. He said he had about a 35-foot free fall. And as several eyewitnesses have described now, those who were on the bridge at that section tried to put on their brakes, tried to get out of their cars and just crawl, scale back up that bridge to safety and helping others along the way.
MnDOT making very clear from what they were able to report that the work being done on this bridge was surface repair work, no work being done at the base of this bridge, and from their initial report, no indication that anything they were doing or the contractors or subcontractors who work along with them did anything to jeopardize the integrity at all of this bridge. But they were very clear to point out as well, they have not been able to account yet for all of the workers and their whereabouts. So for those of you at home who have loved ones or relatives with MnDOT or any of these contracting companies, when we get a contact number for you to find out about their whereabouts and about their conditions, we'll certainly pass that along to you.
Tricia Volpe has been standing by at HCMC watching the rescue crews come and go and getting updates from them periodically. We're going to check back in with her now. Tricia?
Well, indeed, we've seen many ambulances coming and going here just within the last hour. A few minutes ago, hospital official came out, Christine Hill. She is media relations here at Hennepin County Medical Center, and she gave us a quick update. 15 patients at this point being treated here at HCMC. 15 patients. We heard earlier that those are patients with multiple injuries. Some of those injuries are critical, some are not critical at this point. They couldn't go into any of the details about the injuries, but hospital officials say these are the kind of injuries you would expect to see with a situation of this kind. Again, 15 patients being treated here at Hennepin County Medical Center tonight. This is a level 1 trauma center here in the Twin Cities. So this is what folks here are trained to do. They go through drills. They train for this on a regular basis. So they are very ready for what has happened here tonight. This is a disaster situation. It's also described here at HCMC as an alert orange. And Hennepin County Medical Center is putting an alert out there for all of its staff who are not working tonight. Basically, they need any medical personnel who are out there tonight who are not scheduled to work to come in as soon as they can. This is an alert orange. As we said, 15 patients at this point, but this is just the first wave of patients they expect to see here tonight at HCMC. We're expecting to get updates every 15 minutes to a half hour. We're expecting another one in just a few minutes. Mike and Julie?
Joe Fryer had mentioned a moment ago that there perhaps was a swim team on board a school bus involved in this. Have you any update or any information regarding that?
No indication at this point who the patients are who've come here to HCMC. We asked that question. They really aren't going to give any details about who the patients are at this point. We haven't seen any family or friends around the hospital. Of course, there are several entrances, several ways to get in and out of the hospital, and certainly people will be coming here to find their loved ones. But at this point, we don't know who the patients are. We just know that there have been 15 patients who've come in and out of here. We've seen them come in, of course, via the ambulance, and as soon as they are pulled out on the stretcher, a very large team of medical personnel are tending to them. They are triaged, and we're expecting to see that here throughout the evening. Given the scope of what we're seeing in video, and now you're reporting that 15 patients have been taken to HCMC, is the hospital, I don't want to use the word, but for lack of a better one, at all surprised that the volume of patient traffic isn't greater? I don't know that they're surprised by anything here at this point. This is something that they're trained to do. They go through drills for this kind of situation. 15 patients doesn't seem perhaps like a lot of patients coming here to HCMC, but there are several medical centers across the Twin Cities. As I was told earlier this evening, depending on the number of patients, we'll see folks going to hospitals throughout the metro area. Also, earlier in our update about 5 minutes ago or so, we were told that those 15 patients are just the first wave of patients that will be brought here to HCMC. We will be expecting several others over the next few hours. Well, typically the cases they'll prioritize there on the scene, and when they talk about the first wave of patients, often those are just the first they can get to, and oftentimes, on the other hand, it's those they feel are most critical and need the most attention. Are they able to speak to that at all as to where they feel these 15 came from? It's not clear where in the disaster area the 15 people came from. What we were told earlier is just in terms of their injuries, they can't go into details about the injuries because at this point they're still assessing people and trying to find out what their needs are. But we know that some of those patients are indeed critical, so that would indicate to us some very, very serious injuries, and of course others with minor injuries. All right, Tricia Volpe reporting live from HCMC. We will certainly be checking back with you. Thank you so much. And Mike, you were touching on the severity of injuries and logistics of this scene. As you can see, it is a very large scene. It must be a very difficult scene to get people in and out of. And of course, you can see from some angles that we've shown you from Sky 11, several boats on the Mississippi River. And one of the main concerns right now, trying to figure out how many cars went into the Mississippi, how many people may still be in the water. And of course, we know that there are so many loved ones out there who are nervous about their loved ones, their friends, and we want to stress to you that cell phone signals are very difficult still at this time in that area. It is difficult to get a cell phone signal out. But we know that Joe Fryer has been standing by, and he's been talking with some parents of some children who are on a swim team who were involved in this accident. Joe, were you able to find out anything more from those parents?
Yeah, Mike and Julie, sorry, your helicopter's flying overhead. We did speak with some of those parents. They were with a summer program at a community school in South Minneapolis. I'm not sure the name of the school or the name of the program. The parents weren't sure either, but they say it's in South Minneapolis at 26th Street and 13th Avenue. So the kids do a variety of activities every day. They're there during the day. Today, apparently, the activity was swimming. So they were obviously going swimming north of where their school is, and were heading back for the day to try and get back to the school by 6 or a little bit thereafter. One person guessed that there may have been around 60 kids or so, plus some adults, some chaperones who were on the bus. We don't know for sure. But this one man we spoke to says he had both a daughter and a son, and their ages range in around the 10-year-old, 11-year-old, maybe a little younger range. He says both kids are okay. Speaking with people, it sounded like most, if not all, it's hard to say, most, if not all, of the injuries were relatively minor, not terribly serious or critical, but there may have been at least one person on the bus who had suffered some rather more serious critical injuries. So at this point, it looks like perhaps a few dozen students, as part of a summer program, were on a school bus. They've been swimming today and were heading back to the school in South Minneapolis, and they were pretty much toward the center of this bridge when it went down. And a number of people had to go in and try and rescue the students who were inside the bus. But one man we talked to says both his daughter and son are okay, and the indication was that most of the students may have suffered some serious or critical injuries, but seem to be doing all right.
Joe, the physical injury is certainly an important aspect of what's transpiring here, but the psychological injuries to these children, something too that emergency personnel are going to have to evaluate.
Yeah, and certainly that's the case. And again, photojournalist Brett Akagi, who's been around me much of this evening, did actually see one of the children who was on the bus. He spoke with him briefly. I didn't get a chance to hear exactly what that young man had to say, but he was clearly shaken when he reunited with his parents. And think about what this is like for the parents themselves. I saw one mother who was standing there. I wasn't able to speak with her directly. She did not speak English, but you could see the tears in her eyes, even knowing that her two children were okay, going through something like this and waiting to see those children and hold them. It's hard for any parent to imagine.
Joe, how did they end up reuniting? Did they just come across them on the scene, or is there...
The one child who looked older, perhaps young teens, was just here on the scene when he reunited with his parents. These other folks, I don't know if they've had a chance to reunite yet with theirs. And we're seeing some more students here who it's hard to tell, but it appears they may know, or I'm guessing these people who are walking by me right now are probably looking right now for relatives. In fact, I see a family running into the street right now, whether they're doing that to try and find someone who can help them, or whether they actually see someone they know. It's tough at this time to know exactly what it is these families are supposed to do. All
right, Joe, we're going to let you go for just a couple of moments because our Greg Vandegrift is near the scene right now, able to see our first ground pictures of some of what has transpired. Greg, good evening, and what can you tell us from your view?
Well, Mike, right now, can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm on the north end of the bridge, on the west side of the bridge by St. Anthony, Maine. As you can see right back here, there are still, 10 or so, maybe more cars in the bridge right here. You can see where it bent at this one point near some railroad tracks. There are also some railroad cars here trapped underneath. One of the things that I've heard talked about is they're calling for help from all over town, and as we arrived here on the north side of the river, we saw water patrols from St. Croix, Ramsey, and Washington counties and Anoka County rushing by to help. They were bringing their boats in. We also saw ambulances departing. The sense we got from the urgency that we heard in the blast of the siren is that perhaps, I emphasize that they were carrying some injured. Now, I'm standing here with Will Farley. Will was over in the Dinkytown area just before this happened. Tell me how you became aware of this.
We were driving on the 4th Street University area, heading back from my girlfriend's apartment, and all of a sudden we saw a giant dust cloud just appear, and at that point we had no idea what was going on, and we just kept on driving over the bridge, at which point we saw the bridge was bent in half and construction workers were just staring there with blank faces on their look, and nobody really knew what was going on. So we drove down to the river, and at which point we realized the magnitude of what just took place.
I mean, you sort of, everyone is stunned.
Nobody knew what was going on. Construction workers, there was no cops, there was no ambulances at that point. Everybody in Dinkytown was just utterly confused, for sure.
And your thoughts when you looked down?
Just, you know, it's cliche, it doesn't happen, but I mean, obviously there's construction going on. I mean, it makes a little bit more sense.
Do you have an estimate of how many cars? Did you try to count cars?
It's rush hour traffic on 35W. I mean, come on. there's got to be something, you know, there's got to be something bad going on down there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Will Farley, he, as you heard, came to the bridge moments after this happened. There are probably, I would guess, 200 to 300 people down here just trying to see what has happened, to get a sense. We keep getting pushed back. You can see one of the train cars here that would carry, I suspect, again, we're just, this is a best guess here, but carries some kind of liquid. You can see it has been dented. We are not sure what is in that, although I did talk to an officer who said it had been checked. So right now, that's what we see from here. Mike?
All right, we'll pick it up. Thank you, Greg. We're going to stay with you in just a couple of moments. Also want to let people know that the Twins game that is going on there at the Dome, which had been a concern for folks as to how they would deal with that massive traffic going through downtown, apparently they are telling us now that the Twins game will go on because officials with the team and, of course, with security are concerned that if they let people out,
it'll make it worse.
Yeah, you'd put that many more drivers on the road. So that's the situation. If you have a friend or family member who is at the Twins game, they're going to be there through the evening because what we're told right now is they are, whether they want to or not, barring an emergency, of course, they're being asked not to leave.
Well, traffic and people coming by just to look at the scene are certainly a cause for concern for emergency workers. They're asking people to take detours at 280, 694, and try to stay away from that scene. One other thing that could really complicate matters tonight is bad weather, and unfortunately we may be seeing some of that. Sven Sundgaard's in our weather center now with more. Sven?
That's right. Unfortunately, we told you just a little while ago that there are some thunderstorms right on the edge of this situation, just off to the northwest. We'll take a look at Viper and show you what we're watching. X on the map there is where that accident has occurred, and you can see just to the north and northwest, that's where the thunderstorms are right now. Fortunately, the worst of it does appear to be in the North Metro right now, and all this is pretty much moving straight east, a little northeast, but we're seeing a little bit of some redevelopment here on the southwest end of that is a little bit of a cause for concern here. Of course, any weather is a problem at this point. Of course, everyone out there and many folks at homes here across the metro seeing that the skies have clouded up, and that is because of this line of thunderstorms that is unfortunately about to move through the area. And you can see that right around Crystal, Fridley right now, seeing the rain, some heavy rain, maybe even a little bit of hail. We'll show you future scan here and show you what we're expecting. This is 10 after 8, quarter after 8, 8:22, 8:30. So right around the 8:30 hour, anywhere between a quarter after and 8:30, 8:40, this area could be dealing with some rain there. Hopefully not the heaviest of this, which does appear to be to the north, but again, right around a quarter after 8, so we're looking at about the next 10 minutes to maybe a half hour that they could potentially be dealing with some rain showers primarily, but also the possibility there could be a little lightning, maybe some small hail, gusts of wind. Most of that does appear to stay to the north at the moment, but of course these storms could pulse up, redevelop at any time, but for now, fortunately, the worst of the storm activity does appear to be to the north, but they are going to be clipped by some of these showers and thunderstorms just over about the next 10 to 40 minutes, kind of on and off here.
All right, Sven, thank you for the update. We appreciate it. Just one more thing that emergency workers are dealing with, or about to deal with, as the bridge over Mississippi River, 35W, collapsed at 6:05 tonight in the middle of rush hour traffic, and we have been on the air with the story. Shortly after that, we came on the air, and it's obviously still fairly chaotic at that scene, and we still don't have any real idea of how many people might have been affected by this accident.
As you join us now at the top of the hour, expecting to see this primetime programming, you will understand certainly as to why you're watching the coverage you are at this collapse 35W there in Minneapolis. This is tape from earlier this evening. We have had crews on the scene now for a couple of hours, bringing you as many updates as possible. The known injuries to this point, 15 people transported to HCMC earlier this evening, where Tricia Volpe has been giving us updates. The conditions on those patients ranging anywhere from good condition condition to critical condition. And right now you're taking a look at some raw video from the scene that was recorded a bit earlier. Much of this video has been edited, but our apologies if it appears to be somewhat graphic. You understand in an emergency situation that this is how we're best able to tell the story. But again, back to those injuries at HCMC, Julie, 15 people, and right now, no known fatalities.
And of course, it's still early in this search. Many people went directly into the Mississippi River, and there are several rescue boats out on the river right now. We have not gotten an update on what they have found, if anything, at this point, but we'll certainly let you know as soon as we know something. We do know that the American Red Cross has set up a command post at the scene to help rescue workers and also to help victims of this crash. And Carla Holt is there live, and she joins us now. Carla, can you hear me?
Yeah, I do have you, Julie and Mike. Yes, as you mentioned, emergency officials have been extremely busy since this happened just after 6 o'clock, and so they have had emergency and rescue operations as their priority, but they are now getting organized to brief the media and to give us an idea of what is happening here. We do know that there are several different law enforcement agencies, of course, here, including the FBI, including some military operations as well, and we are seeing all of them operating in what seems to be a brand new form. Obviously, these people are not accustomed to dealing with something on this large of scale. Now, I did talk to a couple of eyewitnesses, one of whom was a lady who was in her car on the bridge when it simply started breaking into two. She said she saw a truck go into the opening between the two sections of the bridge. She saw other cars colliding into each other, one car that was suspended, hanging in midair between the bridges. She, as all of the cars were careening and crashing to a stop, her car came to a stop. She got out of her car and then ran to help a nearby school bus. I know you've been talking about the school bus. Well, she was right by that school bus. She and another man went on board that school bus, helped all of the kids in that bus. They are believing that it's about 30 kids to get out of the school bus. She tells me that the kids were complaining of some minor injuries, sore backs, and some cuts and scrapes, but otherwise were okay. But she, again, was helping those kids, those children, and they were about between 6th grade, she believes, roughly around that age. So a lot of scared children, a lot of terrified people here. But again, officials doing the best they can, and just now taking their first formal opportunity to give us an idea of what exactly is happening. In fact, we've just been informed by one officer who was just yelling out to all of the media that is gathering here that they plan to formally brief us in about 10 minutes. That will be the first formal briefing that they will be giving since this accident happened.
That's about what all of our reporters had told us would happen and about what you can expect in a situation like this. Carla, has come up to about 5 minutes after 8 o'clock in the evening, and we should pass along to folks without causing or intending to cause any type of alarm, but we know there are a number of you out there who are wondering about terrorism, and we should tell you that the Office of Homeland Security is on this scene, and they have issued a statement saying that there does not appear to be any indication at all that what you are witnessing is any type of act of terrorism, but it's their duty and their job to monitor this, and if they give us any new information, of course, we'll pass that along to you.
And you're seeing some footage of some of the victims being carted off in ambulances. We know that HCMC is just one hospital. It is a level 1 trauma hospital that is taking care of some of these victims, but certainly hospitals across the area will be receiving patients. At this point, only about 15 at HCMC, but as you can see, they're continuing to rescue people from this accident. And you saw earlier a woman crying, a lot of raw emotion at this scene. And we know Joe Fryer had been standing by with parents trying to figure out where their children were, if they were okay, if they had been involved in this accident. And we are very much looking forward to this briefing in 10 minutes to help us understand the breadth of this accident and how many people might be involved. But of course, it happened at 6:05 on one of the busiest bridges, one of the busiest areas in the metro during rush hour. A gentleman who was on the scene said he estimated about 100 cars were involved because it was bumper-to-bumper traffic and they were only moving at about 10 miles per hour while MnDOT crews were doing some light construction on the bridge. According to MnDOT, it was just some very basic concrete repair on the bridge at the time.
MnDOT doing its best to reinforce that point. We had asked them pointedly if any work had been done to the underside of the bridge, any of the pilings, any of the structure down there, and he was very emphatic, was Kent Bernard with MnDOT, that no, all of the work, as you had mentioned, Julie, had in fact been surface work, perhaps some repairs to potholes and whatnot, but look at this twisted mass of metal here. here on tape that was shot earlier this evening, and you can tell that between the weight of that bridge, which is about a 2,000-foot span, and the volume of traffic on top of that, the impact in the water and the amount of people affected here is, by and large, even greater, I think, than a lot of folks had expected. And it may, in fact, impact what it is we're seeing at HCMC. As you mentioned, 15 people there now, but other hospitals likely taking patients at this hour as well.
And the Twins game did go on at the Metrodome, in case you're curious about that. They believed it would be actually, it would inhibit the rescue effort to cancel the game and send all those people back out into traffic again. So that game is going on. But Mike, I know you just received a press release about tomorrow's game.
Yeah, they're talking about tomorrow's game, a statement from the Twins saying in deference to what's happened here, they are postponing tomorrow night's ballpark groundbreaking ceremony, which was scheduled to happen. So it's that ballpark groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow that has been postponed in light of what has happened. The game itself against Kansas City also going to be postponed. That, of course, taking effect tomorrow. And we're receiving word now through our producer that CNN is telling us three people have been killed in what you're watching right now in this accident at 35W.
And when you look at this scene, you could only hope that the number remains that low. But truly, a vast scene. I mean, we have traffic stopped at University Avenue from the north, Washington Avenue from the south, 4 lanes of traffic on that bridge that just went right into the water. And obviously they have detours in place. You don't want to go anywhere near this scene for a variety of reasons. Take 94, 280, or 694 to get around it. It is encouraging to see, though, as we looked at some live pictures of people being loaded into ambulances, it's still very much a rescue effort. But 3 fatalities that we're reporting now at 8:08 in the evening. And obviously, dive crews and teams are still on the water searching for more victims.
HCMC scheduled to give us an update on further conditions and perhaps may be able to speak more to the sad news that 3 people perhaps have been killed in this accident. We expect that update here in the next several minutes. We're monitoring live pictures and tape coming into our newsroom as we have been for the last several hours, and we're able to provide just a couple here for you, which is clearly videotape as our choppers refuel and our ground crews get more information to pass along to you, and that HCMC shot establishes itself, and we expect that press conference. And also, of course, we will eventually hear from a central command post handling all of the law enforcement agencies and many of the emergency crews as well, and we'll have that press conference for you too as soon as they decide to issue a statement. Obviously, they're trying to get all their facts in line. They want to have one common voice, one continuous stream of information that allows them to maintain a straight story, because in a situation like this, you're likely going to hear different opinion and different thought and different ideas from various folks. So they're going to want to put all that information through a press, for all intents and purposes, and give us a streamlined statement. We'll have it for you as soon as they prepare to announce it.
Right now we have Kevin Smith, who's with the Minnesota Twins, on the line. Kevin, we just read your press release that the game will be postponed tomorrow. We understand the game tonight is going on as we speak?
Yeah, that's correct, guys. This incident happened at such a time where we had a lot of fans already on the site right now, and it was important that we went on with the game for one reason. We did not want to put another 20 or 25,000 people out back onto the roadways without a lot of information to gum up the freeway. So the game, although as difficult as it may be, is ongoing, but tomorrow's game is postponed because we don't want to put incremental traffic back on those roadways when the rescue workers need to be working there instead of fans coming to a ball game.
I'm getting some different information in my ear. I only have a second to ask you this question. After the game tonight, what to become of the fans? Are they allowed to leave at that point?
Yeah, the fans will be allowed to leave. We are going to make announcements in the ballpark regarding this. As we get information from MnDOT and the State Patrol regarding egress from the ballpark, we'll pass that along to the fans, so they won't be surprised. They'll have to move out from the Metrodome area in a different fashion.
Kevin Smith with the Minnesota Twins tonight. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's go to Greg Vandergrift. He's standing by live now with someone to interview, I assume, a witness. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Julie. I am right now with two people who heard this and then looked out and saw it. Joe Hughes and Jared Powers. You guys were here at the Stone Arch Apartments, about 2 football, maybe 3 football fields from the bridge. Tell me what you heard and then what you saw.
Well, I was just riding up the elevator to the 5th floor, and then I felt the rumble, and then we were actually just going to leave, and then we saw this whole scene, so we got down this hill here and walked all the way up to the scene, and it was mainly just firefighters at the time, and then some people that were watching and trying to help too, and then, yeah.
Jared?
Yeah, we carried people from the bridge we put them on the stretchers and then carried them to the ambulance. When you put a bloody, delusional, pregnant woman onto a stretcher and then carry her to the ambulance, it's one of those things you're going to remember for a while.
So she was, one of the victims was pregnant.
Yep.
What was she saying?
She was completely out of it. She was
moaning every once in a while, flailing around, kind of.
She wasn't looking good.
And so you helped get 4 people out of the river or off the collapse?
One was out of the river,
bridge.
And 3 were out of kind of the rubble of where the bridge collapsed off the shore over there.
And the other was in the river?
Yep.
Or?
Yeah,
we saw this guy helping him with a life jacket. He's swimming him in the shore, and he had his whole face was all bloody. And we were talking to him, not talking to him, but the firefighters when we were pulling him to the ambulance, and he had his broken jaw and everything, and he was extremely bloody.
What are you guys thinking through all this?
Just trying to help to start.
Yeah, that was our first instinct, was just to try to help out.
And when you first saw the bridge, believe your eyes, or
I was in shock. I could not. I didn't really have anything to describe. We were silent when we were walking over. We didn't say a thing.
Jared?
Yeah, it's just I couldn't believe it either.
Thank you very much. That is Jared Powers and Joe Hughes. You heard them say they were here in an apartment building within a couple football fields of the bridge as it collapsed. They felt it, and then they ran over to help.
Well, Greg, could you ask them what they saw in the river? I know they saw one man being rescued and brought to shore. Could they see anything else in the river? Cars, other people?
One of my co-workers, Julie, is wondering what else you saw in the river.
We saw quite a few cars floating, some collapsed and everything.
Overturned, yeah.
And then there was one car that was the bridge was at a V, and the car was literally bent in half between it all, and then just collapsed completely, crushed cars.
Gentlemen, we don't want to interrupt you.
On the bridge.
Gentlemen, we certainly appreciate all you've been able to add to our coverage and news tonight, and a job well done on helping those people. We're sorry to interrupt you, but we are getting a press briefing right now at HCMC, so let's listen in live at their update. As the last word, 15 patients there.
Blunt type of injuries from motor vehicle trauma or fall, which means injuries to the head and face and extremities. The problem with these types of injuries is you don't know the extent of the internal injuries, and that's what we're determining right now.
Can you elaborate more on the death, the cause of death?
We believe that the cause of death was a drowning.
Drowning.
And there may be more at the scene. I don't have information on the scene.
Age, gender of the victim?
I don't have that either, sorry.
Can you tell us a little bit about how it works when patients are brought here? I mean, there's quite an elaborate...
We have a very well-developed disaster response team, which we have drills on periodically through the year, but basically we set up a triage center and then we have a physician and nurse team at that center. We call in personnel from the hospital of all types, people to transport patients, nurses, doctors, administrative people to help with the logistics, security to help with security type issues and locking down the perimeter. And then we sort patients into those who are critically ill, those who are not critically ill but ill and have injuries requiring intervention urgently, and those who are what we call the walking wounded, those with minor injuries.
Have you been told what to expect? Have you been told what to expect the rest of the night?
The question is, have I been told what to expect for the rest of the night? And no, we don't know what to expect, except that typically in a disaster situation like this, there will be patients who find their own transportation to the hospital. They may go to any hospitals, as any of you might. If you were at a situation like this and you could get out of there, you'd find your own way. So we expect patients to be trickling in, but those typically would fall in the walking wounded category.
Of the 6 who are critically injured, are they children, are they adults, the 6 who are critically injured?
We have, the ones that came here were largely adults. I'm told that there were 6 children that went to Northside hospitals from the north side of the bridge.
Doctor, could you describe the scene? Business-like, chaotic, somewhere in between?
In the hospital? The scene in the hospital is very well controlled. We have a command center on the 2nd story of the hospital with good communication with the emergency department. We have physician leaders in each of the 3 areas of the emergency department. Nursing tasks have all been assigned in advance for this type of situation, so we keep track of patients very carefully and resources very carefully. We have a personnel pool on the 2nd floor so that they don't all congregate in the emergency department, and communication back and forth so that we get the help that we need.
Have you notified the family of the person who died? Are they aware that person?
I don't have that information. We have a family center set up.
Based on what you've seen in terms of the damage, at this point, after what happened, did you expect it to be more crowded at the hospital, or is this what you expected?
I think this is it's unknown what would happen when how many people were on the bridge or how bad the falls were, so we had no idea how many patients we would get.
And how about drowning victims or people in the water? You've been told to prepare for any of that kind of stuff?
Well, we had 1 drowning victim here, and I believe there are more drowning victims at the scene who...
Doctor, have you ever seen anything like this before?
I've never been in a bridge collapse before. We have one of our faculty was at Kansas City at the Hyde collapse, and says that this is very similar to what happened there.
Do you know at any point in the night, whether it gets to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, do you expect people to just keep coming in through the night, or do you reach a point where you realize that probably slowing in the activity?
I think we'll reach a point, and we're probably rapidly reaching a point where we've seen the most seriously ill patients.
And the person who died, that person died here? Did they arrive dead?
I don't have a lot of detail on that because I wasn't involved in the care of that patient, but I believe that patient probably did not have vital signs when they arrived and they were pronounced here, although I'm not sure of that.
From your vantage point, how did the
I think we had an outstanding response of our emergency medical services from public safety, fire, police, paramedics, the various paramedics services in town. We have medical directors in emergency medicine that responded from North Memorial, from HCMC, from Laconia, and from elsewhere around. So it's a well-organized system that we have drilled many times, and it seems to work very well.
Has there been anything to hamper your efforts at all?
No, not really. I mean, in any disaster situation, the 2 biggest problems we have are communication and transportation. Our transportation has worked very well. Communication is always a problem. As you know, trying to get information about this is very difficult. The people at the scene are too difficult to transmit repeated information. So the necessary information is transmitted, and the details will follow, and you'll probably be reporting more of the details than we have right now.
What sets apart the critical injuries from the non-critical? What is it about?
A critically injured patient is a patient who has a life threat to one of their body systems, either breathing or their heart or blood pressure, or they're in shock, that type of thing.
What have you heard about these, though, that make them critical, you know?
These patients are critical because of potential disruption to major organ systems, chest injuries, head injuries.
How are you dealing with communicating with families and getting the word out that you have people?
We have a system in place for that, but that's not my charge. We have other people in charge of that, and they have organized. The children have not. I'm not sure how many children. I saw 1 child here. I believe most of the children were sent elsewhere. We don't know. I don't know. I don't have information on parents, whether parents were separated from their children or not. I don't have that information. No, we've had an outstanding response, and we have all the people we need right now.
How many doctors, paramedics, nurses would you say are involved in the whole operation?
Well, that's a guess. We have That would be a guess. Hundreds of paramedics from around the Twin Cities. We have 100 paramedics here. Our nurses have all been alerted, 100 of them in the emergency department, nurses from the critical care units. Our whole medical staff was notified. We have 25 emergency physicians, similar number of surgeons. We have internists and pediatricians and other specialties that have responded. The blood bank has responded. Our pathology director for the blood bank is here. We've had an outstanding broad response from the medical staff and the nursing staff.
How quickly was your team on scene once you got the first word?
How quickly was I on scene?
Or your response team for?
Well, we have, of course, we have emergency response team here all the time, and by the time the first patients got here, we had extra people, many extra people here. So it was an immediate response. I knew about this before it was reported on the TVs, which you knew pretty quickly. We told the people who were in the waiting room that if they didn't need immediate care, they should leave and come back later. The number I have is that we have 22 yellow, which means they have life or they have limb injury, but not immediately life-threatening. We had 6 critical patients, and 1 patient died.
And the reason for the death was drowning?
We believe it was drowning. That's what I was told. It has slowed down now. For initially, at this hospital we're taking only critical trauma. Once we were sure that we've taken care of the critical trauma, we're taking any patients who they want to send to us. The hospital, our physician and nursing teams and administrative teams who came in scoured the hospital for available beds, moved patients out from critical care areas if they could be moved, and freed up several beds for patients. Enough that we had plenty of room for people at a place that's usually very, very busy. How many people can we handle? We do drills of 25 to 50 casualties, but this is a community-wide response. So the teams at the site
We're going to cut in on that press conference because we understand the Minneapolis Police Department is giving its own update. Let's listen in.
There is no indication this was anything other than a structural collapse. We are investigating. Investigators have interviewed people who witnessed the events leading up to the bridge collapse, people who were there at the time of the bridge collapse, and anyone who might have any information about it, including people who are being treated for injuries at the hospital. And at this point, there is nothing to suggest that this was anything other than a structural collapse. We will continue to investigate, and folks around the city may see our personnel, as well as other city personnel, doing sweeps at other bridges. This is a precautionary measure.
You have a lot of people working from various agencies. Who's orchestrating everyone to go which way, and how do people know what they're supposed to be doing?
Sure, that's a good question. We do have a lot of people here from medics, police, fire departments, the water patrol. Federal law enforcement is out here assisting us as well, officers from other jurisdictions. We have a command post set up. There is one incident commander. We work under an incident command system that was developed by the federal government for large-scale incidents just like this. And everyone has a job to do, and everyone has a person who's in charge and has their marching orders.
Are you still searching the river?
Yes. We are still searching the river. There are boats in the water now looking for anyone who needs to be rescued. There have been a number of children who were on the scene during the time of the bridge collapse who have been treated and are being reunited with their families.
How many families?
I can't answer any more questions about fatalities. I don't have numbers for you at this point. There will be a press conference with updated information at 8:45 p.m. at City Hall, and Chief Dolan and Mayor Rybeck will be speaking at that point.
Family instructions, McKinney.
Yeah,
that was Amelia, and again, Bill Thompson, the Captain Police Department.
You were listening to Lieutenant Amelia Huffman there with the Minneapolis Police Department giving us her latest briefing and promising another one from City Hall at 8:45 this evening in about 20 minutes or so that we expect at that point then to hear from Chief Tim Dolan as well as Mayor Rybeck, and then again from City Hall. We'll carry that for you in about 20 minutes or so. You heard at the top of that press conference there with Lieutenant Huffman talk about the thought perhaps of terrorism. She's trying to quell that concern and that fear. Homeland Security also weighing in as much, saying this appears to be a structural collapse and nothing more than that.
Yes, and not to be alarmed if you see them sweeping other bridges, because that is just going to be a matter of course. That's something you will see them doing after this tragedy that has occurred at the 35W bridge. She did say encouragingly there were a number of children who have been treated from the scene and are reunited with their families, which of course is great news, but unfortunately it's still too hard to get a grasp on the number of fatalities. We heard the Dr. Joseph Clinton at HCMC confirm they have 1 drowning victim there and 6 critical patients out of the 15 or so they have seen at HCMC. But at this point, they still have divers in the water, they still have rescue boats on the water trying to figure out if there's anyone there to save and trying to get a handle on the number of people who might have died in this collapse. We know that Greg Vandergriff was talking with a couple of people who actually helped victims at the scene, and they described that scene in the river of many, many cars in the river overturned, some that had been collapsed in half. But obviously they had helped one man who had gone into the river. They had helped in his rescue. So it's just too hard for officials to say. You can even detect some frustration in the lieutenant's voice, because I'm sure they're as frustrated as anyone else that we don't know these numbers yet and we can't reunite everyone with their loved ones and get them the information they need at this moment.
Unfortunately, these are the types of tragedies that do take time to sort out, and you heard before we listened in on the Minneapolis Police Department press conference from that Dr. Joseph Clinton there at HCMC saying, you know, because they're a level 1 trauma center, they are going to see initially only the most injured, the critical, 6 critical he reported there, one of course the drowning victim, and then he also had mentioned that there were perhaps 6 other children at minimum taken to other hospitals throughout the area. Their conditions not made known to us at this point. We had reported earlier, according to CNN, that there may have been as many as 3 fatalities. At this point, according to Dr. Clinton, we can confirm 1 right now. And again, this is going to take some time to sort out. Another interesting facet of this that we're following most certainly is the fact that there was a group of campers, or so it appeared to be, who had gone swimming for the day from a camp in South Minneapolis, a group of children between the ages of what we're told 9 and 12 years old. We were told from our Joe Fryer, who was there on the scene, that early word was that most of these children appeared to be suffering from only minor physical injuries. Of course, the psychological trauma that accompanies something like this is an entirely different story, but this early in the evening, this is what we're able to pass along to you.
And we do want to pass along the HCMC patient information line. It is 612-873-3400. You can see it there on your screen. Again, they only have about 15 people at HCMC, but Joe Fryer has been live on the scene for about 2.5 hours now and joins us again live. What's it look like now, Joe?
Well, Julie, they have set up a media center where you just heard from Lieutenant Amelia Huffman, the spokeswoman for the Minneapolis Police Department. A lot of people are gathering here, but at this point you really can't get very scene, and they aren't able to confirm any real numbers at this point. We do not know how many people were injured. We do not know if, and if so, how many fatalities there are. All of those things are still unknown at this point, but what we do know is that there will be another news conference shortly in about 15 minutes at City Hall with Chief Dolan, and we'd have to guess Mayor R.T. Ryback will be there also. Whether we will get any more information at that point, we don't know. They are calling this a bridge collapse. That's what they're calling it at this point, and it is more of a fire rescue operation. That's the term that Lieutenant Huffman gave for it. The police are here assisting, but there are still boats in the water, as far as we know, searching to see if there's anyone who needs to be rescued. Obviously, they have no way of knowing in advance how many cars were on that bridge. They have no way of knowing how many people were in those cars. So it's very hard to account for people because we simply don't know how many cars were on the bridge or how many people were in those cars before this happened. So they have to continue to search the water to see if they can find anyone, any other vehicles, any other people, anything like that. But at this point, they say there are, quote, no substantial numbers as far as fatalities or injuries. We also are wondering whether at the time from what we understand, construction crews were working, doing surface work on the bridge. And from what we understand, were working at the time of this. They're still have no idea whether any of those construction workers are missing. They obviously can try to account for them. They should have an idea of how many should have been on the bridge at that time. And they're working to see if all of those construction workers are accounted for. But again, they are going to be still searching the river, and we plan to get another update from City Hall in about 15 minutes.
So, Joe, you've been there now for about 2.5 hours. Share with people who've just tuned in some of the most striking things you have seen and heard tonight from the scene.
What we are hearing from right now are a number of survivors just standing here in the so-called media spot, the staging area, as they like to call it. We've run into people who were on the bridge in cars, including a family of 3, a mother, father, and their daughter, who talk about what happened, how they fell, what they feel it was about 40 feet into the water. It was certainly jolting to them. They say what saved them was that a number of good Samaritans, pedestrians, bicyclists, people who were in the area who immediately came down and came to their aid to help get them out of the vehicle and get them to safety. In fact, one woman says that she tried to collect the names and phone numbers of those people who saved them so she can contact them later when things are less chaotic to try and thank them for what happened. We also know that there was a school bus that was on this bridge that also fell a good distance, perhaps 35 to 40 feet. That bridge was filled with dozens, perhaps as many as 60 kids who were part of a summer program. They were heading back from a day of swimming back to the community program headquarters in South Minneapolis. From what we understand, we've seen a number of those kids who are shaken but not seriously injured. They've been reuniting with their families, which has been a relief. It's possible at least one person on that bus suffered more serious injuries, but that has not been confirmed at this time. Again, we still have no idea how many cars were on the bridge at the time this happened. We hope to get some more firm numbers in a little bit, but it's clearly going to take a while to assess exactly what happened here.
Just a quick note for those who are just joining us, you are looking at taped pictures of the scene from earlier this evening. These are not live pictures. When you saw a little bit of flame there on 35W just a couple of moments ago, this is also pre-recorded, what you're looking at here. Joe, as is mentioned, has spoken to several people on the scene involved closely with what has happened tonight, and we also spoke with a gentleman who was on the phone with a friend of his who happened to be walking on that bridge while it collapsed. Listen to what happened.
And she just told my fiance, the bridge I'm on is collapsing, I've got to go. And we haven't heard anything since that yet, so I don't really know what's going on. It's just bad. And there's a group of kids that were pulled off, and they were crying when we came down. They were just getting pulled out, and it just doesn't seem, I mean, it's a horrible situation, and you want to stay out of the cops' way and let them do their job, but at the same point in time, you want to find out, is the person that I care about all right? I mean, are they hurt? I'd be happy just to know she's hurt right now, because that way I know she's alive and they know where she's at. So.
Wow, and I'm sure he is mirroring the emotions of so many people tonight who want to know if their friends or loved ones were on or near that bridge when it collapsed at about 6:05 tonight.
And if you are, just like that gentleman was, we can pass along to you this patient information hotline once again from HCMC, who had told us earlier that they have about 6 or so adults in critical condition. They had one drowning fatality. Here is this phone number here at the bottom of your screen, 612-873-3400. We will be putting it up as often as we can here on television, and a reminder, of course, it is always going to be on our website at KARE11.com. You will be able to see the latest news on wire, as well as any of the contact information that we're able to get for you on television. We will put immediately on our website.
But obviously, so many people will just have to sit tight and wait and figure out what these rescue crews and dive teams find in the Mississippi River, because only about 15 people or so were taken to HCMC.